Jonny, welcome to Manchester. You can see why we're so miserable this side of the Pennines now, can't you?
I'm saying nothing. I'm saying nothing, but what a glorious day.
I wanted to talk to you about the challenges of playing across formats, because you're pretty much now the last man standing as far as England players are concerned, because there's injuries to the likes of Archer, Wood, Wokes. Obviously, Ben has retired from ODI cricket, Moeen Ali from Test cricket, like Adil Rashid. That in itself tells you all you need to know about how difficult the challenge is.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing that I'm not one of the last, but no, naturally I think there's challenges. We've seen that over a period of time now. I mean, we only had to look at the Test series this summer when there was the one-day squad that were over in Holland at the same time. I think even if you look at the back end of this summer as well, there's the 7T20s in Pakistan that pretty much overlap with the last Test match as well, and it even goes back to the last World Cup, when then you fly straight to the Ashes with a week's preparation after quarantine and you're straight into the Test match. So look, there are challenges with it, but I think that yeah, you know me well enough now that I'll be trying to play all of them for as long as possible.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, actually, do you foresee a time where you will have to prioritise and choose, or are you going all out for it?
I'll be going all out for as long as I can. I mean, there might come a time for different reasons that you do have to make a decision. I think that's part and parcel of life, part and parcel of cricket, but yeah, in the near future, I don't see me making a choice. I mean, I'm loving being a part of all three squads. I think the very individual squads, all three of them, different in themselves, which is great to be a part of, because it's exciting. You go into a new one, you've got a freshness, you've got a new few faces, a new energy around it, because you're going into a new format.
Can I talk to you then about the specific challenges for you as an individual cricketer moving across formats? Let's talk technique first of all, the technical challenge. How much do you have to tailor your specific practice, and how much does that change from format to format?
Sounded like Jeffrey then, talking about technique. No, look, I think that there are definite things that you have to look at, but at the same time, I'd like to hope my basics are pretty similar across all three. I don't think that I'm someone that has changed a lot from my one-day cricket to T20 cricket to Test match cricket. For me, it's all about playing strong shots, sometimes to my detriment, but at the same time, that's the way that I like to go about it. And it's more from the mental side of things, to be honest with you. So I'll use this for an example. The last few weeks, going from Test cricket back into ODI cricket, the last ODI that we played was last summer in England. So I think that's a prime example of when you haven't played it for a period of time, it does take a few games to get back into the rhythm of 50-over cricket, like it will do in Test match cricket, getting used to batting for 2 and 3 sessions. And also in T20 cricket, taking that risk slightly earlier, which you don't necessarily have to in 50-over cricket or Test match cricket. So there is a transition, there's naturally a transition, but we've played different formats and had to cross over a period of time now. That does it make the transition easier in some ways, but it also in many ways makes it harder because you're playing more often.
Well, I was going to ask that. I mean, you're a vastly experienced cricketer now. You've been around a long time, so you've done this on the back of, you know, the basics that were instilled into you as a young man. If you were starting out now as a young cricketer, put yourself in maybe in Harry Brook's shoes, who's a young batsman looking to move across formats, do you think it's trickier for younger, less experienced players?
In some ways, yes, because there is the lure of playing in T20 leagues and earning a quick buck. Let's be honest about that. There is the lures of that. But I think everything comes from your basic technique, which you learn in 4-day cricket, and then you expand from that. Because you look at Rooty, for instance. Rooty's technique is fantastic, and then he takes that from Test cricket into 50-over cricket into T20 cricket, and all he does is expand his game. The shots that he plays more frequently, and that's all based on a solid technique at the start. The best players in the world, you look at Kohli, you look at AB de Villiers, they all come from having that the solid core group of basics, which then they've expanded from. So I think that if you're just going about looking at T20 cricket, I think it can be tricky in some ways, because you can get caught up in that early bit where you can go, oh, I'm just going to play T20 and look at that. But in actual fact, that isn't a roller coaster that can go very quickly. So your bread and butter is playing your 4-day cricket, your 50-over cricket, your T20 cricket, and making an impact in that to then go forward to enable you to have potentially more longevity with it. And that's not to say there won't be the anomaly that goes on and just plays T20 cricket for a long period of time. But I think if you look at the people that have sustained it over many years, I think that's the journey that they've been on. It's been from your basic technique that then they've expanded the game from.
Can I ask about the physical challenge? So you've talked there of technical and mental challenges. I was interested to hear you on the Tail Enders podcast. You were talking about having learned almost to train smart.
Yeah.
That, you know, you get into a groove when things are going well. You might not net as hard as you used to. Is that something that you've had to learn along the way?
Absolutely it is. I think that when you're coming into a side, and I used to have a full-on net before a test match, and you'd potentially get worked over in the Lord's nets or wherever it was when they can be a bit spicy on day 3, day 4 of the nets, and you're walking out going, well, don't feel that great here. I've just had my obs knocked over, or Gucci's nicked me off, or whatever it may be. So it's that learning curve of, right, okay, well, I'm feeling all right here, so let's just keep that feeling of being all right and walk out with a huge amount of confidence, and then we can hopefully impose yourself on the game.
And is that the same in terms of the training schedules as well? Because I'm thinking of players like Ben Stokes and Virat Kohli, who seem to train at 100 miles an hour in between games, and clearly that may have had an effect on them. How do you balance it?
Yeah, look, I think that it's a very individual thing. I look at the way that Stokesy trains now, and it's a lot different to how he trained a few years ago. I can't comment on how Virat trains. We know that he hits lots of balls and everything. But I think for all-rounders, I think it's different because you're obviously running in and you're bowling all the time. You're batting, you're fielding, you're doing everything, aren't you? So, yeah, look, I think that training is a very individual thing. If you're in red ball cricket and you haven't necessarily played a lot, is it the right thing to net a load, so then you might also get budgies from netting, or do you just go out when you're fresh and you feel good and everything? It's maybe a slightly different way of looking at it.
And when Ben retired from ODI, he went out with a bit of a dart at the administrators for the volume of cricket. He called the schedule unsustainable. Do you hold that view? Is that a commonly held view amongst the players?
I don't think we have a choice, do we? Yeah, I think that the schedule is the schedule, and that's.
But if you had the choice, would you like to play less?
Look, I think that's a difficult one to have. You want to be playing, you want to be doing, but I think that Stokesy does have a point in some ways, like I mentioned earlier about the overlapping games that there are. There used to be lead-ins to certain bits. There used to be training days before games and what have you. This is the first time in 11 years that I've been with England that we've got back-to-back games. I think just coming up against the T20s, we've got Bristol and Cardiff back-to-back. They were back-to-back at Edgbaston and Trent Bridge. That's the only time I can remember such things happening. But they're also trying to fit in different things like the 100 and everything else. So, look, it's a tricky job for anybody. But, yeah, like he mentioned, there's only so many. He's mentioned about a car and refuelling, didn't he? Yeah. I thought it was quite a good analogy, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is going to be certain impacts that it does have, and if you are playing all of those things at full intensity, I think that it is going to take it out on people.
And do the players in the England dressing room have a view on how they see the future of the game developing? I mean, the Future Tours programme is about to be announced. It looks like there'll be an ICC event almost every year. It looks like there will be windows for the various franchise competitions in South Africa, in the IPL, the Pakistan Super League, the 100, the Big Bash. And therefore, inevitably, there's going to be a squeeze on international bilateral cricket. Do you worry that will be the case?
I've not seen it. That's above my pay grade. I reckon leave that to the administrators, and yeah, we'll just try and get out on the field.
Let me phrase it another way. If, for example, 50-over cricket, 50-over international cricket was squeezed, I mean, I've heard in the last week Ravi Ashwin and Wasim Akram, Ravi Shastri talk about that they should play fewer ODIs to create space. Now, my suspicion is that you like ODI cricket and you see it as a good format.
I think it's a really good format. I do personally. Obviously, over the last 5 years, the journey that we've been on as a group in order to get to the 2019 World Cup was an amazing journey to go on. I also think that 50-over cricket is in some ways a stepping stone into Test cricket as well, because you get worked over for longer, and you've got to sometimes grind out difficult periods. You've got to play good cricket shots, and you've got to go about it in a slightly different way, which, if you then prolong that, it is the middle overs especially a lot more like Test cricket. So look, I think it's a really good format, 50 over cricket. Yes, people have their own opinions, and around the world they might not get crowds in for 50 over cricket, but we're very fortunate in this country that 50 over cricket is well backed, and people love coming and watching 50 over cricket, and we love playing it as a group.
I've talked a lot about the individual challenges on you as a player. What about the challenge for the team? I mean, Andrew Strauss is in the middle of a high-performance review, and one of the principal aims of that is they want to create a structure that will enable England to be #1 across all 3 formats. So do you think it's achievable for a team at the same time to be World Test champions, World Cup champions in 50 over cricket, and World Cup champions in 20 over cricket? Is that achievable, an aim?
I don't see why not. I think that one thing that we have to be realistic about is it's not just going to happen overnight. I think that that's one thing that we do have to be realistic about, because, like you mentioned earlier, there could be guys that are in this white ball squad that are not available for the Test squad, that the Test squad want, or vice versa. So we actually have to be realistic in that might take a little bit of time. And we've seen in county cricket this year there's been a change in the amount of runs that have been scored, how the pitches have played, and also we've also seen a change in the number of batters that are potentially coming through, vice versa the bowlers, and they're bowling on different things. So that's not just going to happen overnight. I do think it is attainable. I do think that is attainable, absolutely. But
because what we've seen over the last few years, you know, the white ball team was given a lot of focus after 2015 and obviously became world champions, but the Test team took a little dive, and it seems to have, the focus for this summer has been very much on the Test team, and that has obviously rejuvenated quickly under Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes. But I know this is early days, but, you know, there's been a slight drop-off in the performances of the white ball team. So is there a trade-off? Is there always a trade-off to be had? Have you, in the dressing room this summer, sensed that the focus on the Test team has had an adverse effect on the white ball?
No, I wouldn't say that. I really wouldn't say that. I think that, like I mentioned earlier, the last ODI that we've played was last summer. So I think we need to be realistic with that. As a group, when you come together leading into the 2019 World Cup, that group was together for a period of time. You get used to the rhythms of batting together, you get used to the rhythms of batting in 50 over cricket, and we were playing a lot of 50 over cricket leading into that. Now you take 11 months and you don't play and you don't bat together for that period of time. You couple that with a new coach that comes in, you have a couple of guys that retire, you have a couple of guys that are coming into the side, and learning new roles. You put all of that together, and naturally it's going to take a little bit of time to bed in. Now that's not an excuse, that's just part and parcel of the game that we play. Similarly with the Test side, like you mentioned, there was guys coming in, there was guys coming out, there was not necessarily a settled batting lineup in batting orders, nor bowlers that were necessarily settled. So look, I think that it's something that we have to be aware of. I don't think it's something that we should be really concerned about, because the core group of players that we've had for a period of time are there. I think it's just a case of getting back to playing together.
And do you sense the depth in the English game, both in white ball cricket and first-class cricket, to enable the team to challenge across formats for the #1 stage?
Yeah, I do. I mean, you look at the depth that we had, the team that went over to Holland and the performances that they went over there. You look at last summer, when everyone got COVID and played against Pakistan. You look at the strength and depth of the white ball stuff there. And then you couple that with obviously the red ball stuff and the runs that people have scored this year. You look at someone like Potsy that's come in after taking 35 wickets, I think it was, in 6 games for Durham, and we're still missing people like Joffa, we're still missing Woody, we're still missing Wokesy, the guys that you mentioned earlier. So look, there is strength in depth, and I think that's a good thing that we can look at over English cricket as a whole, because a couple of years ago you might not have said that, whether that be for reasons of the pitches, whether that be for the batsmen not getting the opportunity because they were playing on awkward, tricky wickets. There weren't necessarily, I mean, I remember when I first played first-class cricket, there were good wickets. They were going for 4 days. I think the average length of the game was 2 days and 2.5 sessions for the last 2 years in county championship cricket. Well, batsmen are not going to bat for 2.5 sessions a day, 4 sessions, to then get into a rhythm to go forward to be able to make your 200s, your 250s, to then push and get used to playing on better pitches and batting for longer.
And finally, thanks for your time, by the way, on the morning of a game, even though it's raining. You seem to be absolutely flourishing. Just listening, talking to you now, listening to you, watching you this summer, you're clearly flourishing. Do you feel that you're absolutely at the peak of your powers right now?
I feel good. I do feel good. I think that there's definitely a difference, whether that be COVID or whatever it may be, and coming out the back of COVID. I'm not someone that I hated COVID. I wasn't someone that really enjoyed being locked up, cooped up, being in a hotel room, not being able to see my friends, see my family, go out for dinner, do all of those normal things, if you like. I wasn't someone that really liked doing the whole hotel room. I'm not a gamer. That's not me. So being able to come back and being able to get revved up by the crowd as well. I'm someone that feeds off the crowd's energy, and that's just me. I'm able to, my personality to come back out. And look, I'm loving every part of this summer so far, and hopefully that can continue.
I think the music is telling us we've got to shut up, but many thanks for your time. It's great to see you doing so well.
Thank you.